Hello, everyone. Welcome to the We the People meeting on September 16th, 2005. We've had a lot going on this week, a lot to talk about. So excited to jump into this. And it's been a really sad week with the passing of Charlie Kirk. And so I want to mention that was not an easy thing for me. I personally didn't watch his show a large amount. I'd seen clips, but anytime someone passes through violence, then it's a sad day. I think that we all should mourn. Um, so I wanna start uh, just talking about this group a little bit. This group was formed to bring ideas of all different belief systems together and try to have a good dialogue, respectful dialogue, and try to hopefully find common ground between liberals, conservatives, Democrats, Republicans, all different viewpoints. And so I hope we have uh, several different viewpoints represented in this meeting, and I think we might, and we'll go from there. But I want to start also off by saying that what this group stands for is love, truth, kindness, acceptance. And truth sometimes doesn't look like love. And but I think that they can go hand in hand. Finding truth and doing it with love and kindness can go hand in hand. So that's the goal today is we can get through some conversation and hopefully bring some dialogue together that will help add understanding to both sides today. So let's see. It's hard for me to know where to start, but I'm going to start with a quote from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They came out with a statement after the shooting of Charlie Kirk that said, "The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints condemns horrific acts of violence worldwide, including the recent assassination in Utah. We affirm our repeated calls to seek peace and unity despite our differences. Jesus Christ teaches us to love one another, that hate is wrong, and that human life is sacred. We urge all to reject violence and instead build understanding. Recognizing that we are all children of God, we must treat one another with more dignity, compassion, and respect. As we mourn with those who have experienced loss and care for those living in fear or conflict, we call upon people everywhere to build communities of greater kindness and love." And that is kind of the goal of this group and this meeting is to bring people together and build a community of greater kindness and love. And it's easy when everyone agrees with you to have kindness and love, but it's not as easy when there's disagreements. But it's possible, and I think expected that we do that. So with that, I wanted to jump into the the idea that murder is bad is probably not a hard thing for everyone to agree to. Is it ever justified? Is another topic worth conversing about. When is murder justified? Um, there's certain cases when everyone agrees that killing is accepted, like if you're in a war and you can't avoid it, and the enemy's attacking you, or if you're defending your house and you have a bunch of thugs trying to pull a gun on you, self-defense. Um, is assassination ever justified? In an extreme case, if let's say that um, someone named Hitler is killing millions and millions of people, and you have a chance to stop those killings, maybe you could justify it then. But we can talk about other times, that when killing someone might be justified, and I have a hard time finding too many in my head. But one thing I want to do in this meeting too is talk about principles. And anyone who adds a principle they like to submit that would be accepted for the group would consider, would it work for their side too? In other words, if it's okay for a liberal or a Democrat or or someone left-leaning to do something, is it also okay for someone that's a Christian on the right? And you know what I mean? Is that okay for that other person to do too? So that we're thinking if it applies to one group, it needs to apply to the other. So before you put out a thought, let's think about, wait a second, would I stand by this if I was on the other side of the coin? The greatest person that ever lived on this earth, said, do unto others. Let's see. Therefore, all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Jesus Christ said that. And with that in mind, as we think about what's accepted, would it be accepted if the shoe was on the other foot? So, with that in mind, does anyone have any thoughts about when is it acceptable to assassinate, take someone out? What is the circumstances when you think that's okay? Anyone have any thoughts on that? I mentioned two cases, someone like Hitler, extreme, of course, or you're in a war, three cases, or you are defending your home. Those are the three that I can think of that I would justify uh, deadly force against the opposition, that I personally would understand. Anyone have any other thoughts of when that might be acceptable to use deadly force?
Um,
I've got my
I just turned off the phone so it doesn't repeat. Go ahead. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, I just lost him. Kent, I think you might have sound on your computer now. Hmm. Maybe you don't.
while he's
There we
working
go.
on that, I have a thought.
Okay, yeah, and let me get Kent back on my phone. I hung up because I was hearing an echo, thinking that he was on both places, but ended up that I only had there. Sorry about that. Tyler, was that you that had a thought, and then we'll go back to Kent?
This is Brian.
Oh, Brian, go ahead, Brian.
So this is not necessarily around assassination murder, but just as a general decision-making principle. I've
Mhm.
always looked at things of what is the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people.
Uh-huh.
From a utilitarian perspective. I had a business ethics class that was phenomenal up at Weber State, and the professor, who was an attorney, would have us, pick a topic we felt passionate about, abortion or whatever it is, and then have us switch sides and argue the other side.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
so it's an interesting thing, and honestly, I use that for a lot of my decision-making models in my life. The
Uh-huh.
problem with that in this scenario
Uh-huh.
is it's subjective, and one could easily, on any side, say, you know what, he's doing so much harm
Uh-huh.
by teaching, and I'm speaking about Charlie Kirk, for example. He's doing so much harm by spreading these different ideas and whatever else. That so many people are being damaged and hurt and offended, and
Mhm.
whatever, that it's worth taking his life for the greater good of all the other people.
Mhm.
So it's a bit of a subjective analysis. So that makes it dangerous.
Uh-huh.
But I think when we use that, the U.S. has certainly taken our own initiative to, take out, Iraqi or other leaders around the world over the last several decades when we feel like they've been hurting or harming other people. We have no problem going in and bombing them or killing them because
Uh-huh.
we believe that it's in the greater good of the people to have them dead. So, anyway, that's one approach or one sort of line of thinking or decision making process one could apply to this with its noted caveats and concerns.
Mhm. Does does anyone in this group feel like it's okay? Well, I guess so. I've seen this a lot, and since no one's bringing this up, I've seen it's that. Actually, I'll bring up an article and share my screen here for a second. There's an article that says, I'm just going to pull it up. Take me a second to share the screen here. Um, Got a slow computer. I apologize. Okay, tell me when you see the screen. Can anyone see my screen yet?
It's still loading.
Oh.
Okay, I can see it now.
Yep. So it says polls show rising number of Americans justify political violence. And this is on Yahoo News. And it says in April, the Network Contagion Research Institute, along with Rutgers University, found that 55% of self-identified left of center respondents said that it was at least somewhat justified to murder President Trump. 48% said the same of Elon Musk, and 40% of respondents, including 59.6% of left of center respondents, said it was at least somewhat acceptable to destroy a Tesla dealership in protest. And that's concerning to me because that's a very large percentage. If you have that same percentage on the right of center that believe that, then that is setting us up for a civil war. If people believe it's okay to kill people that disagree with you, then that puts us back, as a country back into our early stages of the Civil War, when rather than work things out diplomatically, then we'd go to war to solve an issue. Um, it, I have kids and I've taught them use your words, all growing up as they've been growing up. If they can learn to express themselves and talk things out and negotiate and such instead of going to violence, then things are a lot better. But if both sides start thinking it's okay to go to war over an issue rather than talk it out and compromise and vote and do the things the American way, then we are heading towards a civil war, which is very, very dangerous, very, very painful. Uh, Hindsight will prove if that ever happened again that it was not worth it. As far as the pain and anguish it caused. Um, I shouldn't. I will put the caveat on there that the first Civil War freed the slaves, and I have African American children, so I'm very aware that that might not have happened without the Civil War. So I'm grateful for that outcome of the first Civil War. But I would hope that we're not in a position where we have to have a Civil War to solve this, and it would be very painful. And I believe conversations like this can help resolve things so we don't have a Civil War. Kent, you had some thoughts?
Yes, I'm sorry, my computer audio wasn't working, so hopefully I'm giving people too much feedback.
No problem.
But here's my thoughts. I think the only times that you are justified to take another life is if there is a declaration of war and you've been conscripted into that fighting force on behalf of your country or your community. And the second one is if you are defending your life or your family's life in that very moment. Okay. So I don't think there's any other reasonable uses for killing other than those two. And going back to the comment about, well, can we take out, an Iraqi leader or an Iranian leader or a Hamas leader? Well, again, if we have declared war against that country, then there's justification for that. But if we haven't, there's not. And I'll give you a great example of where this is happening right now, and that is with these members of the alleged members of the drug cartels that are in those boats with drugs coming to the U.S. So there's been 11 were killed the first time, 3 the second time. We have not declared war against Venezuela. There were many other options to stop that. The military obviously knows about it, or they wouldn't have carried out the attacks. So they could have stopped that boat in international waters. They could have taken those people into custody. They could have tried them, and so forth. And so the justification, in my view, for that is zero. And I think it's one of those kind of things that leads to international conflict and greater types of war. Now, people may say, well, these are the worst of the worst. These are bad people. Well, that may be, but that's why we have laws. And there's no U.S. law that I'm aware of. There's no international law that I'm aware of that says you can do what we have done in those two cases.
Right.
And, you mentioned scripture earlier. I don't know of any scripture that would sanction that or allow that. And let me just give you a what if. And I'm not saying this is true, but what if 2 or 3 of those 11 people, or 1 or 2 of those 3 people, were being forced to do this? So in other words, the cartel had their family, captive in Venezuela, and they said, if you don't take those drugs to the U.S., we're going to kill your family. And so those people viewed they had no choice but to be on that boat heading to the U.S., and they were murdered. So I think we have to be really careful justifying the taking of life anytime, especially if we believe we are a country and a people that follows the rule of law.
Well said. So it's funny you bring up the boat killings of our government, the Venezuelan boats. I could see someone arguing that they have declared war on us by bringing fentanyl or whatever they're bringing over to kill our kids, and they're killing off our children and our teenagers and our young adults with these drugs they're bringing over. I could see someone arguing, hey, they've declared war on us. They're killing our people by bringing these over. But if that's the case, I'm in total agreement with you that we should declare war on that act at least and say, if you try to bring drugs that will harm our people, we will shoot you down, and have Congress declare that war rather than just a president saying, hey, go out there and kill these people. I don't know if I'm agreeing with you or not, but I think I might be. Would you agree that it's if Congress, who is the only group that has the right to declare war in our country, and we've gone away from the Constitution on that, but would you agree that they would have a right to declare war on that act, or those people bringing those drugs over, and then it's okay to do that?
Well, I would still be very concerned, because when you declare war, you are declaring war against an entity, usually a country, or I guess you could say I'm declaring war against a group, like you might say one of these cartels is a group.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is you don't have all the information to know that those individuals were members of a cartel.
True.
You might say, well, the U.S. intelligence community says they are. Okay, but like you said, that may be the case, but if it is the case, you take that intelligence to Congress.
Yep.
And Congress says, yep, we are in agreement. We will declare war against that group.
I think
so. I don't get there.
Yeah, I think that we're maybe on the same page with that. Now, I would ask you this: anytime we go to war with anybody, there's going to be hired mercenaries, maybe people that have been forced to fight that battle, and you might run into similar things that the government might be forcing people. Like, let's say China attacked us. I don't think they would have any choice but to go to war against us. If China or Russia, in these countries that are totalitarian, then the people would have no choice to go to war or not. So would that same principle apply in that case that you're applying to this, that someone might be forced in there that doesn't really want to do it?
Well, again, that's when you've got a nation state that has, overtly declared war against you as a nation. And that's a different story. You're always going to have situations where people are forced into complying with the laws of their country. And at least if you're a member of the Elders Church, you believe that, you are to follow the laws of the land you live in. Correct?
Yep.
Within reason.
Okay.
So if they were conscripted or forced by definition to fight that war against, in this case, the United States, I think we're justified in responding. We can't check out everybody's credentials to see if they are voluntarily fighting or not. But a situation where there is not immediate threat of life, like these boats coming across the ocean there to the U.S.,
Right.
and you have other options to stop that, you're always should use those other options.
I agree. Wonderful. I like it. Next, does anyone else think of any times when they feel like taking someone out is justified? It's happened recently again, where um, we had someone go and take out a business executive, and a lot of people felt that was justified too. Does anyone in this call, and to make it a little easier, well, first of all, does anyone in this call feel like either of those murders are justified and would like to argue that point? Anyone? I saw 55% would justify killing Trump, so I would hope that we might get 1 out of 10, 9 in this call that might be willing to justify that. But so far, no one. Anyone willing to take that side, not saying they agree with that, or willing to take that side and say, here's why someone might feel that way.
I mean, kind of what was mentioned earlier is
Absolutely, yeah.
we might feel like it's for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, like I'm not saying one way or the other with the like that healthcare CEO.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he could have been a very dishonest person, robbing people, and so for the greater good, it could have been better that he no longer have that job or have that responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Murder, I don't know if that's the right way, but it,
Right.
Luigi, whatever his name is,
Mangione or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, that could have been his justification is like, oh, I'm helping the American people.
Right, right. And interestingly, the judge let him off of any of the more heinous murder crimes today or yesterday. I think it might have been today. And honestly, I don't even know the person that was killed. I have no idea whether he was Democrat leaning, left leaning, right leaning. I don't even care. He was a business executive just trying to do his job. So I don't even I can't justify that in any way, and I don't even care what way he believed. And I think whoever murdered should get the full extent of that. Brian, did you have a comment you wanted? I saw your hand raised. Brian Smith. Brian Smith. No, no, I saw a hand raised. Must have taken it down. But okay, and I hate to just throw out my opinion on top of that, but that was my opinion so far on that one is the justice should be blind. It doesn't matter which way someone believes. Just did he commit a murder? Was it premeditated? Was he using self-defense? All these things that normally go into whether you throw the book at someone for murder seems to be going out the window. Yeah.
Just to clarify on those charges that were dropped,
Uh-huh.
those were murder charges associated with terrorism. So those were dropped. There is a second-degree murder charge still in place, and then there is a federal first-degree murder charge still in place.
So we still could get
it's the full extent of the law can still be applied there. It was just that judge particularly said all of the facts were not there to justify connecting it to terrorism because he had not threatened a group of people or multiple people or whatever.
Right. All right. And I've talked to a lot of people. I actually go out of my way to find people that disagree with me because I like to try to understand the other side. So I've had a lot of opportunities to speak with people that feel the other way. So since there's no one in this call that wants to take that torch, I'm just going to tell you what arguments I've heard justifying the Charlie Kirk assassination. The first one that I heard was he was a bad person. And so, I can see someone wanting to kill him. He was a bad person, said a lot of bad things, said a lot of hurtful things, hurt a lot of people. He's just a bad person overall. And And so I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, what is the definition of a bad person? How do we determine if someone is a bad person or not? Does anyone have any ideas? What would define, and you can put yourself in the shoes of that person that might be feeling that. Let's say that it's not our understanding necessarily that we agree with that, but let's throw out some reasons why someone would think it's okay to murder a bad person or what makes a bad person.
I've had I've heard people say that he was a bully. So you could say a bully is a bad person. That's what
Totally.
some people have said.
Mhm. And I've heard that he was very offensive and offended a lot of people. Any other things? What else makes a bad person?
Well,
Breaking laws, which I don't think he did.
Breaking laws. Okay, go ahead, Kent.
was going to say, you know, the concept of a bad person, by definition, is an opinion until it's been adjudicated, if you will, by, whatever laws you have determined you want to have in your country or your location, your community. So just because one person says another person is a bad person, I don't think there's a definition for that. That's a personal view. Now, if a person had been, brought before a jury of his peers, he was determined to be a bad person because he had committed murder, he had raped somebody, he had, stolen, a person's life savings in their later years of life. They couldn't replace it. Those would be the kind of people that would be deemed bad people, but they were deemed that by the court system, and that's what I think we have to remember. If we are ever going to justify harming somebody else because we individually believe they are bad, that's not what our whole society is based on.
Right. And I'll since you said what society is based on, our original founders, the founders of our country who have built the greatest country in the world based on the 10 Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They viewed their rights given to them from God, and the Bible was used as the basis of common law from the beginning, and the Ten Commandments were central to that. And so, did someone break any of the Ten Commandments was probably in our founding of our country some of the basis of whether someone is being a good person or not. And I can't think of any of the Ten Commandments he was breaking. So, what made him a bad person to the people I've talked to is he said hurtful things. And hurtful things, what he felt were truths, basically boils down to he disagreed with some people on his opinions. He
Yeah.
he may have said it in ways that were not the kindest at times. I've seen where I probably wouldn't have worded that way. I've watched a lot of his videos since his death, and have thought, actually I can see his point where he's coming from on a lot of his beliefs, and I certainly believe that our country believes in freedom of speech, freedom of thought, and he is entitled to those beliefs. He might have said them in a way that wasn't the kindest. So, can being unkind make you worthy of being killed? Can hurting someone's feelings because you disagree with them be worthy of death? Anyway, other thoughts before I keep rambling. Go ahead. Anyone? Jeff.
Yeah, I think it's really subjective when they said that he was a bad person,
Mhm.
obviously. Most of the backlash that I saw was based on his beliefs about the conflict in Israel. And, just they were saying he was dehumanizing the other side. Um, but most of the people that celebrated his death, I think they were dehumanizing him. And I think that's the biggest problem is this through social media and the polarization that's going on, there's a lot of dehumanization that's
Right.
happening where people are surrounding themselves with the the furthest of their side, and it's dividing us to the point where we look at the other side and we think, oh, how could somebody possibly think that way? Or we start seeing them as not even human at that point. And that's really where the problem comes up. Governor Cox, he mentioned this. He has really strong language when it comes to social media, but he called it memification, which is essentially the rising generation doesn't take a lot of things seriously. So you see this man getting murdered in front of thousands of people, and people are just like shrugging about it, right? Or celebrating it even. And it's honestly, that's the most worrying part, is that people are taking away the sanctity of human life.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
If I
Go
could
ahead.
say something, I've been watching it, and I think like everybody, I watched a lot of his videos prior to him being assassinated.
Mhm.
He was a staunch evangelical Christian, and he had beliefs on abortion that were probably as extreme as you can get, as far as um, even in rape and incest, that the baby should be born.
Mhm.
He had strong opinions on transgenderism, on LGBTQ things, and he voiced it with the arguments that he felt were right. He did say stuff. There's all kinds of stuff out there. He did not say that he thought gay people should be stoned. There's a lot of things where they cherry pick things, and even Stephen King has gotten in trouble with that one, where
Mhm.
they cherry pick things and then they say, this is what Charlie Kirk has said. And I saw a lot of people reposting that stuff on Facebook, and I don't think that they had ever really listened to the full arguments on those things and how they cherry picked it out. Now, was he didn't back down, but I don't think that he was, in the ones that I've seen quite a few of them. He's a pretty level headed guy, and he was willing to defend any position that he took. And I think that that was hard for people, and especially people that hadn't thought through all of the ramifications of morality when talking about abortion or talking about marriage and family. And he was a big advocate of women were designed to have families and to have be mothers, and that was he got labeled as being bigoted for that. You know, there's all these things that he did, but he was trying to fight the battle that he thought was the best battle that he could from his beliefs. And I think a lot of people are scared to have the debate. He was a debater, you know, that's what he did. And I think that that's why people feel that it was justified that he was taken out. And I think that that comes from um, oh, there's that would be a long conversation, but I do feel like there's some reasons. I do want to mention that the Aragua was classified as a terrorist organization, and that's how they have. That's why they have done that the way they've done it. But whether that's right or wrong, it was designated as a terrorist organization, and so that's why they, and that's the Defense Department or the War Department that that they did that. And so, anyways, that's just 2 cents on that one.
Brian here, if I can jump in real quick.
Go for it.
So as I've watched a lot of his videos prior to his death and many, many more since then, and I'm pretty pretty compassionate to both sides. When I watch the environments, this would be defending his assassination or giving a reason why it may be justified in some's mind. If you look at the environment he created, where he draws people from both sides, and then puts these moderately uneducated, I say they put themselves, moderately unprepared, uneducated people on these microphones in front of, thousands and millions online. And then they ask questions for which he's very prepared for and is, I'm sure, thought through, rehearsed, researched, and answered them hundreds of times. And yet they're asking it, in their mind for, sort of a courageous purpose. How do you define a, baby, whatever? And he just slaughters them. And then I watched his face, and I watched a lot of the reaction or lack of reaction. And there's people in the crowd sort of made fun of. I was watching this one young man on a video last night who kept trying to make his point, and everyone in the crowd was like making fun of him and laughing at him, whatever. And I watched Charlie Kirk, and I wanted him to say, "Hey guys, come on, be respectful." And he does do that in some, but I want him to say, "Hey guys, come on, be respectful. Like this is a place where people can feel safe to share their opinions." But he allowed the social pressure of the environment to sort of intimidate these people to where some of them lose their words and they walk off and they can't even gather their thoughts. So they're very, they're unprofessional or inexperienced debaters. And so, as one might justify his death, he might say, he put thousands, tens of thousands, and made known or exposed or made fun of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of college students around the country, and intentionally brought them in sort of like a lion's den and a lair. And again, going back to my initial sort of decision-making framework that some might use, which is it's better that he be taken out because he's causing so much harm and damage to what are already a pretty vulnerable group. The LGBTQIA plus community is known for higher rates of depression and suicide. And then just one last thought. The problem with anyone using any measure of their own to justify killing somebody is it's subjective. Like people can be so enraged. Like you watch Erica, his wife, and her video, man, she was pissed. You could just see the rage in her eyes. People have all kinds of emotions and could easily justify all kinds of things, even rational people. So I think it goes back to like we have to have some objective boards, objective standard in which we're allowed to take lives. Because otherwise, if anyone can apply their own standard, someone can say, "Hey, this guy's killed 10 people, and they're children. I'm going to kill him."
Can you think of any standards that are already set with that, or what would qualify?
Well, I think the only thing you can do is just go to the law. I don't think anyone can grab anything in their own set of beliefs or their circle of friends or family or anything, because that's all subjective. You can gather that and create this case in your mind and build such a big case that it becomes very justified. I think you have to leave it to a predetermined, non-emotional set of rules, laws, group of people to justify it. Otherwise, if you do anything other than that, and carving out the self-defense piece, which was mentioned earlier, you just run the risk of people taking it into their own hands.
Yeah, and when this group was started, that we started here with, we had three different, very different ideology based people, and all of us came together at the beginning saying, the Constitution protects all sides of an argument. When a liberal is in the presidency, then the conservatives turn to the Constitution. When a conservative is in the presidency, then the liberals turn to the Constitution. I've heard Nancy Pelosi and many other leftists saying Donald Trump needs to follow the Constitution, and they're right. And we have all the laws we need to keep the peace. And courts, if someone says something that harms another person, there's tort laws that can come into effect, and you can sue anybody based on them hurting you. And if you have a valid reason and proof that they hurt you by what they said, you can win in a court of law. So everything is set up if you do it the proper way, and there's no need for putting yourself above the law or going around the law or taking the law in your own hands. There's no need for that in our country because we have all the laws in place to protect those. Jeff, is your hand up?
This might be changing topics, but I've seen a lot of people like disagreeing with Trump's use of the National Guard in Washington, D.C. to like clean up the city essentially. And he's made like suggestions that he's going to do it in Chicago and Memphis and stuff. Honestly, I don't know where to stand on that because I don't know if he's allowed to use that in that way. So I would just like to hear what you guys had to
Well,
say about that.
I'll tell you, me and Kent Bowman discussed that quite a bit in our last meeting. I don't think I've posted yet, but I don't want to distract from this conversation too much because we're much more than we can discuss in an hour on this conversation. But I'm going to post. I don't think I posted that one yet. I'll post that one up, and you can look at it. There's a there's a YouTube page that lists all the conversations, including this one, at let's see, it's We the People Meet Utah on YouTube. We the People Meet Utah is the hashtag, and you can see all of our meetings, including this one after today. But I want to go back to one thing too, where they've said Charlie Kirk is a bad person, and I'm just going to share my screen because um, I think the only justification that I can see, there are only few that makes him a bad person is people disagree with what he said. Um, oops. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Does it showing Charlie Kirk family pictures?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't think a bad person, generally, I would say, okay, they might disagree with me, but I can tell they love their family. They're probably a good person. How you treat those closest to you is what I personally judge as what's a good person. And obviously, that little girl loves him. And from what I can tell, he's a family man that treats his wife and the kids great. And his wife said in her conference that he was a perfect husband and father. And I can say that my wife doesn't say that about me. I try my best, but I think what God will judge me of is how did I treat my wife, number one? How did I treat my children, number two? How did I treat my neighbors? And those are number three. I don't think God's going to ask what political opinion I had. Um, did I offend others? Even Jesus offended people sometimes, and because he was saying the truth. If you offend people by saying the truth, then I don't think that's evil. I think that's what Christ would do. Not he wouldn't go out of his way to offend people. Maybe Charlie Kirk did that sometimes. I'm not going to say Charlie Kirk was a perfect person. He was far from it. I wouldn't say the way he said things was exactly how I would say things either. And maybe you might disagree even by this conversation. But anyway, I find it hard to say it's okay to kill him because he was a bad person. If we put it on the other side and say, well, anyone else from the left is a bad person according to me, so it's okay if we kill them. I'm sure that everyone that thinks that Charlie Kirk should be killed would say, no, 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 it doesn't apply this way. But you have to put the shoe on both feet and say, does it apply? And we have the law. If someone felt strongly that he was doing bad enough things to be killed, he certainly should have enough to go to jail. Let's take it to the courts and see if he's broken any laws or hurt someone bad enough to destroy it. But anyway, that's the first argument that I wanted to bring up. I did hear people saying that he had said that gay people should be stoned. I watched that video, and someone was arguing that Jesus agreed with being gay because he said we should love everybody, and he said he basically was pointing out that she's cherry picking from the Bible because she said that same book you're quoting says that gay people should be stoned. He wasn't saying he agreed that gay people should be stoned. He was quoting the Bible and just saying, hey, we can't just cherry pick one thing and say that's the whole story. That was his point, and that's where the author that you mentioned earlier, for Stephen King, had said that. And then once he realized, hey, I guess he wasn't really condoning that, he apologized, and I think he lost some book promotions because of him saying that, because it wasn't true. He hadn't condoned it. He just was quoting the Bible, saying, hey, we've got to be careful what we quote from the Bible. But anyway, okay, I'll be quiet for a little bit. Who else has some things they want to talk about?
Just kind of what you were talking about with like there's rules and laws in place. I'm just curious. I'm not saying Charlie Kirk is like anything that he did was like against the law or anything like that, or should be against the law. But is there anything where the law falls short of protecting certain people? Like,
That's a good question. Anyone have any answers to that?
because that could
I
be
think you
a
have
change that we need to push for if that's something that is needed to be like, oh, like this person can be held accountable instead of being murdered.
I'm going to bring another perspective. See, there's the reason he went to college campuses is because there were many right of center people, not even like extreme, that would try to go to college campuses. They weren't allowed. They wouldn't let people form clubs. They wouldn't do things if you were conservative. There was a big, like, you couldn't just go to class and wear a MAGA hat. Like, that wasn't acceptable. Um, and so what Charlie Kirk did is he was actually an equalizer. They were very hostile environments, but what he was trying to do is give room for people that had an opposite view to feel strong enough to voice it. And he was very successful at that. And so there was a reason, there was a lack of um, diversity of thought, um, ability to debate and discuss things. University presidents wouldn't let people come to campus. And it was, he started this, what, like 12 years ago or something. You know, it's not like just recently. And he debated professors. He didn't just pick on, he actually probably preferred that. I think he would probably get bored of doing the same argument over and over again. And he changed his opinions on things too over time. It wasn't like he was impossible to change opinions on. But if you don't debate and you don't have a place to debate, then how do you ever arrive at truth? And if somebody has a better debating purpose, I mean, I can see the excuse at the beginning, but there were people that would come, there were professors that would come up and talk with him. Um, I don't think that, and at the end of it, a lot of those people, you're like, we agree to disagree on this. I can understand your point of view from here. I don't think that there was as much hate as what is being put out there. And if people haven't seen the videos enough, I just don't see it the same way. I do believe that definitely there was contention, but I think that contention existed prior to him even getting involved. And if you want to go back into news stories, I mean, people would try to set up a table for election time, and they would tear down the table, and the university would do nothing about it. You know, it was very one-sided on the university campuses, and he was an equalizing force. And so I don't know how you do it without having strong opinions and strong things. And if people can't debate it out in a good way, I don't know how you ever get to truth, because it's not good to shelter and only show one side of the story either. I think that it's fair to have multiple people talk, and I think that's where you arrive at when people in good faith are talking. That's where you get there. Is he perfect? No, he wasn't perfect. Is there some times where I saw him lose his cool? Maybe a couple times, but it's not like. And he would very often say, "Let the person talk. Let them talk," and that was the more common approach.
Mhm.
Calm down, let them talk, and then it's. I just don't see. Um, I understand what the caricature they're trying to point to, but I just don't believe that that's reality.
So an interesting thing, equalizing too. I don't think he was extreme in most cases. There was someone that came to one of his rallies that I saw last night. I watched the video that was saying that gay people shouldn't be in the Republican Party or shouldn't be on his team or whatever. And if you want to see him own someone or embarrass someone in public, that person got it. He argued for the rights of gay people to be involved in anything they choose, just like anyone else, and said, why should what someone does in a bedroom make it so they cannot participate in anything? You know what I mean? He really let him have it for being bigoted against gay people, and that was showed me that he's not as far extreme as everyone thinks he is, because he would argue both sides of that. If someone was on the other side saying that our kids should all have sex education at 6 years old, he'd take that person to task too. But for the right for adults to do whatever they want to in their own privacy of their homes, he wasn't from what I could tell, against that. But this whole thing that you're talking about, having the right of both sides, we all believe in free agency, and many of us believe that free agency is the most important thing that we fought for before this earth time. You can't have free agency if you're not enticed by two sides. You can't make a choice between two options if there's only one option presented. And I would make an argument that we are only given one side many times of many issues, and we're not given the free agency to even learn the other side. And I'm gonna show why I believe that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about the other reason why people are justifying killing people is because they're fascist. And I want to tell you I've watched videos from the 1950s where people have researched and found that part of the communist agenda was to call people fascist if they ever disagree with you. They would teach the communist the young people that were coming into communism, hey, if you're ever losing an argument, just call the other person fascist. And that has not changed for the last 80 years. So using fascist as a reason that it's okay to kill somebody is because they're fascist. That is being thrown out there so much that many young people believe it. 55% would say that it's okay to kill Donald Trump because he's a fascist. And they're only given one side. And so I want to talk a little bit about what is the definition of a fascist, and maybe get some input from people on that. And then I'm going to argue that we are in a fascist society, but it's not the way we think. So think of what defines a fascist. Anyone can throw it out there. What are some of the characteristics of a fascist? Anyone?
Tell us, Rob.
Okay. Sorry. The definition said it's a populist, defined as a populist group. So when someone appeals to popular opinion against the elite, then they're being fascist. So think of Newsies or the Revolutionary War. The populist is someone who appeals to the populist against the elite. That was the Webster Dictionary definition. Another one says exalt nation or race above individuals. So racist or nationalist. So someone who values their nation, someone who is racist. And it also says uniformity of thought, or said, sorry, I'm going ahead of myself. Centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader. And basically the opposite of a constitution, someone that doesn't use the constitution but uses dictatorial powers. Um, and I would say to become a fascist, you must have an effective fascist, like many have been that ended up killing millions of people through our history. You have to control the media message. You have to have uniformity of thought control. You have to have punishment against those that dissent against you. And those are some of the things that are needed to really give someone the power to become a fascist in their country effectively. And am I missing anything? And maybe someone can throw something else out there that when I see this, I know it's a fascist thing to do. Any thoughts?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
Last night, like I don't know, I've always hated that word fascism because it seems just to be thrown out at just
Yes.
about anything,
Hmm.
and there's not like a clear like, oh yeah, this is why I'm calling you a fascist. So, anyways, I was looking it up last night, and over conservatism is considered fascist.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was kind of strange. Like, what does that even mean? Over conservatism.
Right.
To
And
me, it's just
and I think that
conservatism and then
mhm.
like not conservatism, either side.
Mhm.
And
Well,
so
that's because the left has trained their people to bring that up against the right. So that's a definition that's evolved over time because it was taught since the 1950s that that's how you have a comeback against the conservatives. So you call them fascists. So I can see why that's turned into that meaning, but it doesn't make sense to me either. So
Yeah, it didn't start that way for sure. That's a modern take
Right.
on it to go
Yeah.
against conservatives. That's the type of stuff that people read and they're like, oh, then I totally understand. That's right. He is a fascist. And then people use words that people don't understand. And I think fascist is used most the end definitions that Rob gave were the more likely fascist terms that I think most people think of, where you have an authoritarian who ends up stopping free speech, taking away um, freedoms until they can't take it away without killing people, and then they kill people. And I think that's where most people historically put a fascist. I don't know.
But it seems like to me, Charlie Kirk stood for freedom of speech. Yes, he probably went against the elite sometimes in his opinions, so that could be considered fascist. But so does the left when the elite are when Donald Trump's in power. They go, the other side's always going to go against the elite that's in power because that's just what you do. So it's basically whoever's not in power in government could be labeled trying to get populist opinion against the elite. Anyone could be called that, depending on who's in power. Exalts nation or race above individual. That seems the opposite of Charlie Kirk. Wants a centralized government, the opposite of Constitution. That seems the opposite of Charlie Kirk. So I don't think I would argue none of those reasons apply to Charlie Kirk either. I could see some of them applying to many of our presidents, including the current one. Sometimes it looks like he's just doing whatever he wants to do and doesn't consult the Constitution. So and I would fight against him if he does that too. I'd post against him, which I have. I have a website where I post things, very very much trying to keep the people in office in control. But um, any other thoughts before I move on to my next thought?
I would say there's only one that and I don't know if I'm talking too much. I'm sorry if I am, but
Yeah.
there was a time during COVID you couldn't talk about vaccines. You couldn't talk about if you thought the election wasn't fair. You couldn't talk about um, things. And I personally, because I share Facebook with my wife, I'm not super vocal on Facebook, but I had several family members that were kicked off of Facebook that couldn't post, that they wouldn't share the tweets or the whatever, and they weren't saying anything negative. But I feel like that when Elon took over X, I don't know if people believe this or don't, but I think it opened up free speech again, where people could say things what they believe. And I think that Charlie Kirk is an extension of that at the campuses and things that you would get canceled for, and canceled means kicked off platforms and things. I think that's more fascist. You know, I think that if you're inciting violence, you shouldn't be allowed. There's some limits to free speech, right? But I don't, I don't, I think that because people were under that thumb from during COVID and then through, I think that the release um, has also happened where now Facebook is taking on something very similar to what Elon is, where you can rate people and you know what I mean. There's more freedom and there's more debate, and I think that's probably a good thing. But some people can't deal with it because they grew up in a generation where those things were not acceptable to say because you would get cancel culture. You would if you said that, then you would be shunned and maybe lose your job, on the other end. And so now we're seeing a flip a little bit on that. Um, but that's the environment that led up to this.
Hmm. And that leads to my next thought is that even more than any individual in our country being fascist, I see more our society exhibiting a lot of fascist traits more than any individual. Can a society be fascist is my thought. And I'm gonna just go through a few points and then I'll open it up to everyone else. I've talked a lot. I've thought a lot about this meeting, but I want you guys to look and see with the thought in mind, is our society fascist sometimes? Someone look up Google and see what percentage of people use Google in the world. I've gone through this. I'm just seeing if it works for someone else besides me. But yeah, does anyone pull up what percentage of the world population uses Google, or United States maybe? I got 90%. Does anyone else corroborate that? We all go to Google as our source for truth. I do. Anyone disagree with Google being 90% of what people in America and maybe even the world go to for their source of truth?
I don't disagree that a large percentage of people use it. I use Google one out of every 20 questions I have. I go to ChatGPT, Grok, or Gemini. I
Yep.
rarely go to Google.
Interesting. I haven't gotten into the ChatGPT stuff yet, but I would guess that ChatGPT gets a lot of its stuff from the same sources that Google does. But that would be my argument there. But 90% is Google biased? That's the next question. Anyone want to Google that and just see if they find that Google's biased? See what you find. I'm curious.
I can tell you it's biased.
Mhm.
I have an experience back in that same time period. I was helping my daughter try to find. She was writing a argumentative essay for school,
Mhm.
and I went on Google and I said, and she picked the topic. I didn't pick it, and I was surprised she picked it because it's not
Mhm.
something we talk about a whole lot. But she wanted to know about guns, and that could be a topic that we can discuss. And so
Uh-huh.
I searched in Google and I said case for and against gun-free zones.
Uh-huh.
I went 3, 4 pages. I searched it 10 different ways. I couldn't find it. I finally had to go to the NRA website and find the authors of the pieces and then Googled the authors and their names to find. And I tried all the different ways because she was
Kent, I don't know what happened I
supposed to
lost.
write an
Oh,
article for the conservative side or the gun ownership side, the Second Amendment side of it. It was just mind baffling to me.
huh. So I did an exercise. I'm going to share my screen again. I just did a quick exercise because um I wasn't even trying to go there, but I found that I was having a really hard time finding unbiased anything on the internet about Charlie Kirk. And it led me to thinking, well, I feel like I'm only given one side of the story. So I'm sharing my screen now. I went to Google, so I'm still getting my information from Google in my search to find out if Google's biased. And I listed these are if I said who are the left-leaning media sites, and it listed all these different left-leaning media sites. Interestingly, it left out some of the big ones like ABC News, Reuters, AP News, The Hill, NBC, and CNN. It didn't list them as left. When I asked who's centric, it didn't list them as centric. When I asked what's right, it didn't list them as right. And I got a list of all the companies that they said were centric, and those are in green here. And then the ones that were supposed to be right-leaning, we had Google told me it was Fox News first, then Newsmax, then The Blaze, then Washington Times. And I thought, okay, well, why is it purposely leaving out some of these major things? So I searched one at a time. Is AP News left-leaning? Or sorry, I said, what is the leaning of AP News? And Google told me it was left. So why isn't it on their list? And CNN, they said it was left. And ABC News, it said it was left. And I was like, why is it not saying it's left when I search what's left? Someone doesn't want us to know that all these major news networks are leaning left, but if you search it one at a time, you'll find that there's research teams that do it, left that really search, and all sides does a lot of figuring out is someone leaning left or right. And all sides, this is where Google gets its message of whether they're left or right leaning. And the reason I started looking at this is because was trying to get I was trying to go and look up the article about Governor Cox's conversation without getting the left spin to what he said. Because I really liked a lot of what Governor Cox said about how we are an example in Utah of how we handle when something violent happens here. We don't go and burn up buildings. We have vigils, we pray, we're peaceful. And he said that's an example for the world. And I really liked how he said that. So I wanted to link to an article and give him kind of kudos and say, look, you did that. But every article then twisted to start talking about left points. And I thought, I don't want to link to one that's talking about, I just want to link to one that's unbiased. And so I went to Google and searched Governor Cox's message about Charlie Kirk. And what I found was these are the ones in order of what was listed where I could get the articles. CNN was first, The Hill was second, NPR, NBC, Politico, Newsweek is listed as being center, which was nice. Number 6. I didn't know they were center. I didn't know I could click. But once I did all this research, left, 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 slightly left, local more to the center, KSL was listed, which I don't count local places really, because honestly, anytime I put a conservative post in there, they don't allow it. So I feel like they're left because I can't post a comment that's conservative on KSL, yet my liberal friends can and they get accepted. So I don't feel like they're really right. It took until page 2 or 3, number 19, until they listed Fox News, which I would bet gets more traffic than any of these before it, yet they listed on page 2 or 3. And I felt like I am not given, or the American people aren't given a choice. We are only given one side most of the time. And that is what Charlie Kirk was fighting against, giving a voice to the conservative side, which is not allowed on campuses, which is not allowed in our schools with our children most of the time. Our kids don't get that. My kids, I struggled the entire time they've been in school to try to let them see there's another viewpoint to a lot of different issues when they're starting to lean left, even growing up in my home. And I feel like that is fascist. And then when someone does make a comment that points at another side to silence it, that is fascist. And so me being a conservative my whole life, I'm 53. I started being interested in politics at 15. So 38 years, I feel like I've been silenced constantly for the 38 years when I've been involved in politics. And that's what fascism does, is it silences the other side. And encouraging the murder of somebody that disagrees with you is fascist. That is fascist. I'm sorry, but that is. And so I would argue that our society has become fascist, not Charlie Kirk, um, not the conservative right, but society in general is fascist because they don't allow multiple opinions to be given the same stage many times, whether it's social media. When people tried to point out that there's some real nasty things going on in the Biden presidency that you'd find on Hunter Biden's computer, the government got involved and shut up the social media sites. That's come to light that they disallowed social media sites to post anything about the Hunter Biden laptop. That to me is fascist too. That's society saying you can't talk about this. So anyway, I would argue that his Charlie Kirk's message was that of Christ, number one, families, number two. He always encouraged people to have kids and have a family. And freedom of speech, number 3, very much anti-fascist things. And that I would argue that our society is fascist, and he was fighting against fascism in our society. And with that, I'm done, and you guys can argue against that, and I'll try to be quiet from this point on because I've way over talked. I have a lot of passion about what happened. It triggered me because I've known 2 people closely that have been killed for political reasons in my life, and it's because they had conservative beliefs, anti-government or conservative beliefs, that they were killed. One of them I had dinner with a month before he was killed, and he was very Christian. He was trying to point out, his name was Willie Solis. He was trying to point out the things that our government was doing to support dictators in his country. And he was killed on his way home because he was exposing that. And felt the very same feelings as I felt when Charlie Kirk was killed. It was such a sorrow to me that a good person was killed for trying to bring truth to light. But anyway, okay, I'm done. Thanks. Who wants to talk?
I'll give you a couple of comments quickly.
Yes.
I think Charlie Kirk, much of what you said is absolutely accurate. I think he receives kudos for quoting from scripture, from talking about things that are bigger than our life here on earth. I think he gets kudos for having a great family, taking care of his kids. I love what Ryan said earlier. I think he gets kudos for taking a debate out, because we need to have debate. He did that in difficult circumstances and so forth. But I have to disagree with you with respect to that all that Charlie Kirk did was great and good. And the reasons as I've looked at him over the years, you can't come in and make statements like, one of the biggest mistakes we ever made was to have the civil rights movement of 1960s. If you believe in Christianity, believe in Christ, every person is equal. Every person has the right to do and become their very best selves. That's what I believe in anyway. And so his comments tended to surround themselves a lot of times with race. His comments about, I don't have the quote here, but that he thinks prowling blacks, would go around just for fun to target white people. Okay, there's not a good reason to make a statement like that. I remember right here in Utah, I think it was down in Lehigh, we had there were a couple of missionaries, one of which was of color, and a group of white kids came up and began persecuting them and using inappropriate language and all that kind of stuff. And that kind of racism and that kind of categorization of people automatically eventually leads to violence. Everybody has to believe and feel like they have a right to achieve whatever they possibly can. So I think his comments about Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement were a negative thing for our society. And I think his comments, quite frankly, about the transgender community is negative. I'm not a believer in encouraging transgender changes and so forth. That's not what I'm saying. But I am a believer that the purpose that we're here is to be able to make choices and to utilize our agency. And so if there is a medical need that somebody believes they need to have, I don't think any of us have a right to say, you can't have that. You can't do that. To me, that's what someone like Satan would say. I'm going to take away your right to do whatever you want to do, and I'll force you to do the right thing. That's not what we're about. Then his comment about, the great replacement is not a theory, it's a reality. That's a racist comment. That's saying, we're going to stop whatever progress is being made here. We're going to go back to where we were. So there's a lot of things about Charlie Kirk I love, and I think he was a good man in many, many ways, and brought a lot of things to the surface that need to be discussed and let people have a choice and so forth. But I will say, just in the balance of things, there were things that that he commented on that were racist, or at least anti other religion. Like things he used to say about the Jews, that Jewish money was what's ruining our country. How can somebody say that? I mean, it just drives me nuts. Jewish money is ruining our country.
I will interject really quick and just say that you're probably agreeing with me more than you think, because I said that there's a lot of things he said that I wouldn't have said that way. You know what I mean? So I'll put that in there.
But the things that he's bringing up, Charlie Kirk was not a racist, and he didn't believe that black people shouldn't have. He was against DEI. He was a meritocracy guy, and all of the arguments, like there's a flyer going around, and it has these same things that are out there, but just look deeper because he's not a racist. He wasn't. He didn't say that. In that sense, it's the same thing as Stephen King with the gays and the. It's just not true. And so when you go back and you look at it, um, it's a quote from somebody that it was a meeting that he recorded. He didn't share the whole thing, but when Charlie Kirk was confronted on it, he just wasn't a racist person, and he didn't. If you didn't choose, and you're an adult, and you chose to do something different, like it's mischaracterizing. And I think that we should maybe do some research on these topics, because if this is what's believed out there, then it's the same thing when you Google it, you might get that answer, but it's just not, it's out of context, and it's not accurate.
I think it might be worth having a meeting to really look at his quote, look at the full, full 5 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes before and after, and say,
What was he trying to say?
what was he trying to say? Was he being racist?
He's definitely against DEI for sure, and he defended it. But his thing was that you have to have a meritocracy, because nobody can, if you don't, then everything declines. And that's his point of view. Like, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be some help for different groups that have been disadvantaged. I'm not as extreme as that, but he defended it. And I don't think that he ever felt like if people would come and say you're racist, he says, give me one example. And nobody could.
But let me just finish, because
yes, go ahead.
I listened to you, and I just wanted to just give you my thoughts, and you don't have to agree with me, but let me just finish really quickly. My concern here, okay, is when you look at those kinds of things, and I've listened to it myself. This isn't an excerpt I've read, and I've looked to make sure that I could literally jot down the speech, the location he was and the day he said it and all those kind of things. And I'm not taking these out of context. The bottom line is he's a good guy in a lot of ways. I agree. And he says some things that are very harmful and contrary to what I believe our country's all about. And you could probably say that about just about anybody, okay? None of us are perfect. None of us have the full vision of what we hope to be at the same point in time in our lives. I can remember, you guys are all too young for this, but I can remember when Richard Nixon had his situation, right? And I remember my mom and dad talking about it. I was young, and basically said, man, the media is out to get him because he's a Republican. They're out to get him. That Washington Post is the most negative thing. They're making this up. It's terrible. I hope he can get through this. And then, within weeks of that, you had, a couple of courageous Republican congresspeople and senators that stepped up and said, look, we've looked at this. He did do all that stuff. He did try to create the issues he was trying to create with Watergate. And then he was forced to confess and left, right? And so I think we have to look at all these sources. We have to make our own decisions. That's why we're here on Earth, in my view. And we have to look at what people say, and we have to understand why they're saying it. And as an example, I'm far more conservative than I am liberal, but I look at what J.D. Vance just said yesterday or the day before, that he said, go after the people that are going after Charlie Kirk and call their employers and get them fired. Okay? Now, that's called canceling. And Brian, I agree with you. That was happening the other direction, 5-6 years ago or whatever. It's now happening this direction. And we have to be careful that we are not putting an R&D as to what's right and wrong, but saying this action is courageous, this is good, this action is not, this is bad. And in particular, what we're talking about today, violence, we have to be in a position where we counter violence no matter what side of the aisle is advocating it. We have to get rid of that, or we won't have a chance to debate in the future. Now I'm done, so feel free.
I just don't know how you get rid of it without doing. I actually did take a pause when I heard JD Vance say that, and I'm like, do I want to be on that side? And where I'm coming from on this is I'm like, well, if they are advocating violence and saying that it's okay to kill, then I think that does go past your First Amendment right. And those people, I don't think you go to their employers. I am not that person, so I draw lines on, like, because I think people. I don't post things a lot of times because I've had people get really hurt because they believe what's been fed to them, like what Rob was showing on Google, and it destroys some relationships that I don't want to destroy. And so I try not to put stuff out there that, and I have in my mind when I put stuff out that I might hurt some people that I really care about. And I try to be very careful as to what I post and how I post it because of that. And so some of these people shouldn't lose their jobs because they believed the misquotes from that were put out and circulated about Charlie Kirk, or because they disagreed with him at a level that made them so angry and they felt that they were justified in doing that. I don't think that you should lose your job necessarily, or that people should be telling people on it. But if there's somebody that's repeatedly doing that stuff and they're condoning violence, I don't know. I don't know where to sit on that, but it's given me some pause.
And who is
I don't know.
And who is that that's repeatedly condoning violence?
There's been a lot of people. I saw posts where they had I don't know. I can tell you some of the worst ones I've seen. They had a picture of the Ku Klux Klan. Who would mourn for that person, and that he deserved it. And there's, I don't know. There was a guy that there's a lot of things where you see this and you're like, whoa, that's like much further than I disagree with that person. And my brother got kicked off because he was questioning the 2020 elections and wanted to post something about Hunter Biden's laptop. That's a little bit different than I think a lot of people have never been checked in their speech, and because of that, they're surprised that the reaction when you say these things, and then all of a sudden now people are looking at it and they're like, oh my gosh. I don't know how to deal with that. That's the most disappointing thing about everything. I can actually understand how the boy involved in this got to where he was. I think I can understand that, and I want there to be some level of compassion for that kid. But I don't personally understand people going on and acting like this is okay, that he deserved it, he had it coming. I just don't think that that's a good mentality to have. And that's what's really hurt me the most out of anything, is that comments from people that I know that feel that strongly. And I'm like, where are they getting their information from? Because maybe we need to have more dialogue, because I feel like I don't know where this hate is coming from.
And all I'm saying, Brian, is I agree. You could go on the internet and find people on both sides that are saying, terrible things about killing other people, or celebrating it or condoning it. And that's bad. We all agree that's bad. But I'm saying what people in leadership positions, people that we as people look up to, our senators, our congressmen, our president, our local leaders, our religious leaders,
Yeah.
Who in that group are condoning this and saying that it was okay for Charlie Kirk to be assassinated?
Yeah. I personally don't have religious leaders. There are some on the internet, religious leaders that have given from the pulpit some talks about it. But I I I don't want to go there. I actually agree that JD Vance has to be very careful. I'll tell you the one that really bugs me is Stephen Miller. I just don't trust that guy. And I think that he will overstep. And so, you know, I agree that it can't go the other way, and we can't do what was done to us and feel justified in it and cancel people because they have a differing opinion. But there is something with violence that you have to stop. You can't let kids think the poll that Rob quoted that 55% of the people think it's okay to kill somebody that you disagree politically. We have to change that somehow. And if we let people continue to condone it, so I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you control the internet in a way that's fair because, like Elon Musk is famous for saying, when you do that, who's the arbitrator? Who's the referee? And whoever that referee has biases. Even like Rob, I think everybody agree with Rob. You try your best to understand situations and to love people and to figure it out, right? Rob, even if you were in charge, I think there would be people who would be very upset with the decisions that you would be making on what is allowed and
Absolutely.
what's not allowed. And so it's really, really a hard situation because I want it to be free speech, but when violence gets involved, there has to be something that stops it. And so it's a really hard answer. I don't know the answer. Like,
Well,
but
but Brian, I think the answer is exactly what our governor said. If you look at what Governor Cox said, that's the answer. You know, you don't fight violence with violence. You don't raise the temperature when people are upset and angry with each other over something, or people are getting false information and they're acting on it, and you got to calm it all down. You got to step it all down, and that's where my biggest concern is that we've got to have leadership in whatever institutions people believe in, whether that's governmental, religious, business, you name it. But we got to have leaders that say, look, let's take the temperature down and let's really get the facts. I mean, this whole thing with, I'm sure that probably the press has come out now with the latest on Tyler Robinson, but we're out there, we collectively, leadership, are out there making insinuations and predicting things and saying things when we don't even have all the facts. We have a. I'm not against the FBI. I'd like the FBI, but you got an FBI leader that is out there twice saying, "Oh, we got the guy," and he's supposed to be in the know, and we don't have the guy, but he wants to be the first to say, "I got the guy," right? And and then all these comments initially about, oh, it's all about transgender, and then it wasn't, and then there is a connection, and then there isn't, and it's a leftist leaning situation when the kid came from a very conservative family, and yeah, maybe he is leftist, but we don't know any of that until we start to get in and look at the facts. But we have leaders, unfortunately, that are willing to say, just to jump at the first thing they see if it's supportive of their position, and say that's what it is. I look back to the situation in Minnesota where those two Congress people, the one and his wife were killed, and the other one and his wife were attacked, but they lived. And the first thing that was out of our leaders' mouths was, here's a leftist attack, and we got to stop this. And the reality was, the kid was probably just nuts. He was a registered Republican. Doesn't mean anything. He's probably just nuts. Or not the kid. He was a 57-year-old guy. I shouldn't say kid. It was a guy. And there's still been no adjudication of what were his political leanings and why. And and so here were two elected officials less than 3 months ago that were shot. Him and his wife were killed, and um, and all likelihood is it was a political assassination, just like this one. But we didn't hear about this kind of stuff there.
What? Yeah, why is the FBI not on top of that? I've wondered that same thing. I'm not happy about that at all.
Well, we still don't even know on the first assassination attempt. They haven't released this stuff on Trump's first assassination attempt.
Right.
And I think depending on who's in power, they do that. But I think that we will get the answers
I hope all of them.
from from the current administration, but maybe not. I don't know for sure. Here's what I wish that people would do. There was I watched some YouTube things, and one guy did a montage of all of the reactions of prominent left leaning commentators, and there was a lot of things said in there. And the guy at the end said, "I wish they would have said, you know what, guys, disagree all you want, but these are our neighbors. Like, let's cool it. Like you were saying, take the temperature down like 1,000 degrees. There's got to be a line that you don't cross. You don't kill somebody you disagree with." And you would hear all of this. I don't think anybody deserves to die, but Charlie Kirk was a racist, a bigot, or whatever. And over you hear these things, and you're like, is that really toning it down? Is that really the message? The message should be, guys, I disagreed with Charlie Kirk. You guys disagree with Charlie Kirk. There's some things that we disagree with about him, but let's take this down. We cannot resort to violence and really focus on the violence side. Don't put the violence up front and then say all the reasons why you understand why the person was violent. You have to say, stop. Let's take this temperature down like 1,000 degrees. We can love people that we disagree with. It's okay if you disagree with him, and it's okay if you didn't like him. You know, you you can't condone violence, and that's what I wish that was the conversation. Then there could be some healing, and both sides should do that. I'm not saying that there haven't been bad responses. I really don't like Stephen Miller. I mean, if you want my opinion, and he's the head person in the Trump administration, I just don't like him. But I don't like when he talks, and I don't like how he talks. He's very divisive, and so I think it happens on this side too. And I was worried about what JD Vance said yesterday. I didn't like the way it was phrased, and so there's definitely some stuff here, but really the temperature has to go down. And on all sides, I wish that was where we were as a country, and that's the most disappointing part about it is when I see this over and over again, and it blows my mind.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you 100% on that, Brian.
Brian McD, did you have a comment?
I do. I just a couple quick things and a question or two. I've got to jump here.
Mhm.
Really appreciate the invite through my sister Shelly. She says you're a pretty level-headed guy, Rob. So look forward to getting to know you a little bit better. It sounds like you guys meet every Tuesday at
Tuesday at noon.
Mountain
Mhm.
Time.
Do the same
Okay.
Same Zoom link. We use the same one every time so people don't lose it.
Okay, yeah, perfect. How long do your meetings typically go?
We usually keep them to an hour. This has been such a hard topic this week that I decided to let it go as long as people want to talk. So we're down
Yeah.
to 5 people, 6 people left on the call.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I'm just leaving it open this time. It's usually
Okay. Sure. And then do you have any sort of like a Facebook or WhatsApp or Signal chat where you guys have an ongoing conversation?
No, we need someone to manage that and start it. I haven't done it because I'm just doing too many things. So if anyone feels the desire to do a meet that we the people meet group like that, that'd be great. We do have a YouTube channel for we
Okay.
the people meet Utah. But yeah, I can't take on one more thing. But if anyone, I've been hoping that someone would bring that up and want to do that. So I welcome anyone on this call. Does anyone want to volunteer on that one? then you have to monitor it. Eventually we'll get one. Eventually someone will feel the need to do that, but I think that would be great.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a number of groups and businesses and things. I have a bunch of different chats, but WhatsApp and Signal are two that I use pretty regularly. If we want to just simply have a conversation, there's not really like a formal group like Facebook, but just a group of people talking. I'm happy to create one of those. Does
Yeah.
anybody here use WhatsApp or Signal?
I use WhatsApp.
Okay.
I don't use.
So it may or may not get much response there, but
Mhm.
and then I just started using Facebook. My daughter, who's 15, laughed at me. She goes, "Facebook's for old people, Dad."
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's probably why I
it's
use
all
it.
about it's
Yeah,
all about Insta and
yeah,
YouTube, whatever. Um, and then I guess my last thing I would say is it's funny we're talking about this as we've been chatting. A friend of mine who has very different political beliefs than mine texted me back. I reached out to him in all curiosity and sincerity, and I wanted to know how he was responding emotionally to the world's reaction to Charlie Kirk's death. You see these videos of millions of people around the world, like wildfire, just Charlie Kirk. We are Charlie Kirk from South Korea to London to wherever.
yeah,
And I wanted to know what was going on inside him. He and I are actually part of a men's group. It's like a men's accountability group. We started
yeah,
it like 8 years ago. We meet twice a month on Zoom. It's super duper cool.
yeah.
Very, very high standard a bar of accountability. I'm the only member of our church in there and a lot of different beliefs, but I wanted to hear his thoughts and feelings around what was going on. And he shared open with me. And I just want to read a little bit. And I
Mhm.
want to read this with the question, can we invite more people like this? And I think there's an open invitation and even a strong encouragement to invite other people.
Yeah.
Um, I'll just kind of skip through some of this, but he said, this election revealed that our country is willing to elect about as abhorrent of a human being as I can imagine in office, one that has no respect for democracy, who dreams of being an autocrat. Basically, a large portion of our country said yes to a movement towards autocracy and a desire win over the libtards. Forgotten on history. If allowed to, I believe that some contingent of the Republican Party would take us all the way back to repealing the civil rights protections of the 1960s, bring us back to white nationalism. From what I understand, Kirk openly preached that, saying that passing civil rights legislation in the 60s was a mistake. All I
Mhm.
can say in that case is, what the F is wrong with you? The guy advocated for integration of church and state. It's cynical, but have you ever heard the line, there is no hate in the world quite like Christian love? That's what I think of when it comes to the Charlie Kirks of this world.
Mhm.
So, and this was not meant to be a debate. This was me reaching out to him, asking about his own feelings. But for me to get on every Tuesday and have discussions with guys who are like-minded with me is not super enlightening. I got plenty of people around me who want to go shoot guns and blow things up and, fly flags and whatever. I'm wearing a Doge shirt, if you can't tell where I stand. In terms of the way I believe. My hat says I love Jesus.
Right.
Front says FBI, firm believer in Jesus. So I guess I would maybe invite all of us, and I'm sure you've done this, but I want to hear people from the other side. I want to hear my next door neighbor who's a professor at UVU, who's very liberal, who had a Kamala Harris sign up in his yard. And I want to hear the guy next door to me on this other side. I live in Provo on the East Bench. The other side of me taught history at BYU for 50 years. He had a Kamala Harris sign up. Like, I want people like that to join the conversation
Me
and
too.
have some discussion. I feel like if it's primarily white, LDS, Republican, conservative people, it's a pretty myopic discussion. We can all sort of agree that Charlie Kirk was a good guy.
Yeah.
So that's just an invitation for myself and maybe others to invite people like that so that we
So
can have
yeah,
a
I have tried really hard. This group was started by a libertarian, a Democrat, and me, the Republican. And the other two have dropped off. I'm staying so far. And I joined several liberal groups to try to get them to join. I joined the Utah County Democratic Party and invited their whole group to join us in this conversation. Haven't gotten any of them to join. And as soon as they've let me stay part of the group until I invited them to this meeting here today. And then they removed me from their Facebook group when I did this invitation. So I'm really trying hard. I reach out to my all my friends and family that has left-leaning ideologies, and they've joined us sometimes. And several, even one joined today. I won't tell you which one it was, but yeah, there's several. I have been getting a good group of those to, I mean, one or two to attend occasionally. Not a good group, but I really wish we could get more of the left leaning because, and I tended to talk a little too much in this conversation. I think I was a little passionate about the loss of someone that represented a lot of things I stood for, like freedom of speech, and so that was hard for me. So I admit I kind of governed this conversation a little too much, and I try to not to do that usually. I'll try to back down in future conversations more, but that might discourage them from joining too if someone like me is moderating that jumps in too much. So that could be a problem. Um, but anyway, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is just an idea. What if you rotated? Someone signed up in advance with a
Yeah.
pre-vetted topic agreed upon by a couple of people, and you had other people lead discussions.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea. So I was thinking of the agenda for the next meeting and maybe taking the top five things that people said about Charlie Kirk and having two sides defend theirs and have someone besides me moderating that. Um, what do you guys think about that idea? And then probably we leave the Charlie Kirk discussion away after that. And we have a really good discussion. Was he racist? Bring arguments on both sides. Was he anti-LGBTQ? Bring videos and arguments on both sides. Because I've already found videos that prove to me he wasn't some of those things, but other people have videos that prove that he was. And, wrap it up with, okay, if he was racist and anti-LGBTQ, or does anyone still think he should be shot for those opinions? You know what I mean? It's for next week's meeting. Just see if anyone thinks that that's dangerous to be those things enough to justify a killing rather than a court case. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
that's a thought for next time. What do you guys think about that agenda for the next meeting?
Just briefly, I guess I'm personally interested in a few things. One,
Hmm.
um, fundamentally, there's a lack of the valuation of human life right now.
Mhm.
It's why you see hundreds of people celebrating his death. TikTok dances and whatever, and people are getting expelled from universities and other things as they get exposed. So that's highly concerning to me. So maybe there's a discussion topic around that. How do we help instill in people in the younger generation the value of human life? Um, I think a lot about bringing people together and talking about how we can work together with differing people of differing opinions and you know, confrontation is not the right word because there's going to be confrontation, but in environments like this, but maybe strategizing from both sides. How do we work together? Um,
Yeah.
I think I don't know where Charlie Kirk stood on things is interesting, and was he a bad guy or a good guy? It's interesting too. But the fundamental question is like the one we started with, which just political violence. Is it okay when you justify killing, all that kind of stuff? I think that's the deeper fundamental issues. I think are the ones that I think are going to be um, ones that have a huge impact on our society long term. So I don't know. I'm new to the group, and I'm just sort of throwing out some thoughts, but
Mhm.
um, I'd love to hear from both sides.
Yeah,
Um,
me too. Kent, what do you think about finding someone that is willing to be the moderator for the next meeting that does support that Charlie Kirk was racist and LGBTQ, and it could be you, Kent.
Well, my own, again, I'm one of seven of us, but
Mhm.
I kind of feel like we've covered that topic. I mean, I think I'm not I'm not saying he's racist. I'm not saying he's anti-LGBTQ plus. I'm just saying he said things that would cause many to believe he is. Okay. He can't, again, the biggest one of all is how you go back and say it was a huge mistake for the United States to have ever entered into the 1960s civil rights movement and passed those laws of equalization. And that would I don't know if he's racist or not, but that would lend itself for many to believe he was. But I don't think we're going to I don't think that debate per se is going to probably get us there. So I probably am not a huge fan of continuing the Charlie Kirk thing. I think we've covered it quite a bit. If there were other topics we want to talk about,
Yeah.
we could talk about,
I agree.
for example, we could talk about control, control over the Fed. We could talk about, comments surrounding certain aspects of what should the United States be doing on the international stage, right? Should we be defending Russia? So comments like why is Russia the only country essentially in the world that doesn't have tariffs against it, right?
Is that true?
It's just funny to me that.
So they're the only ones that don't have terrorists in their country acting?
Tariffs.
Oh, tariffs. Gotcha. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Why are they the only country that don't have tariffs imposed against them? What is the right position for the U.S. with respect to, to the European Union and to Ukraine and Russia, and how do we feel about this latest Shanghai Cooperative Organization, and with India and China and Iran and North Vietnam, combining with others in Asia to maybe say the United States doesn't need to be the leader anymore. We've got everything they've got plus. So, I mean, there's a lot. All I'm saying is there's a lot of topics out there we could do.
Yep.
Which I'd probably move to a different one. But if we want to do it again on Charlie Kirk, I certainly am fine with that too.
Okay. Yeah, let's think about that. And the other thing I did you get a book? I sent you a book, Kent.
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Okay. If it doesn't come, I might try to send it again. But none dare call it conspiracy. I sent a book to Kent. That's kind of shaped a lot of my beliefs, that book, and that philosophy. So when you get it, let me know. I wouldn't mind that being a part of the discussion once that comes to you, and maybe look at one or two chapters each and talk about that a little bit. But it really is a key part of I would view politics. I probably wouldn't be interested in politics if it wasn't for the beliefs that I get from books like those. So anyway, and then one last that I had too is I had one of the people that I love and care about a lot that really felt like it was justified, or is trying to justify it in her mind, the Charlie Kirk assassination. She came to me yesterday and said, what if the statements that someone says causes someone to get radicalized enough to kill somebody? Should they be taken out or to cause damage to them? And I said, I can't, I was joking back to her and I said, I can't believe you're saying that all the people that called Charlie Cook fascist should be taken out because someone got radicalized enough to kill him. And she was trying to make the point that he was okay to kill because what he said might have got people to kill other people, and so it's okay to kill him. And when I said that way, then she was like, "Oh, come on, like, what are you saying?" And I was like, "You got to put it on both feet. The shoe has to fit on both feet. You're saying that it's okay to kill him because he might have said things that were hurtful and made people be violent to LGBTQ people, but the way you said it would fit the other shoe too, that whoever said he's fascist has now radicalized a young, vulnerable person to kill him, and should they all be taken out? You have to have the same principle to both sides. And anyway, that was what I started the meeting with is, first of all, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And then if you have a principle, you have to think, is that going to serve me when I'm on the other side too, or is it one-sided? And we don't want laws or thoughts that are just one-sided, or that only benefit us at one time and hurt us. We want to be fair to all sides. So anyway, it's my final thought. I said that before. Anyway, Anything else, Kayla, since you're the only one that endured this 2 hour conversation and the drudgery of it, do you have any thoughts that you want to add before we end?
No, not really. I enjoyed being a fly on the wall,
Uh-huh.
and it's interesting to hear everything. So
Okay.
thanks for the invite. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody, and until next week, we'll adjourn.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.